We haven't even talked about the SEC yet. So all around the SEC is always the caboose on the show, as you know. Texas, right now would be considered the favorites to win the league this upcoming year. And there's a pattern with a lot of these teams that I'm about to mention, because Texas and LSU and Alabama and Oklahoma are 4 teams just right off the top here that need to mightily improve their run games. I mean, just inexplicable underachievement running the football last year, and it led to amounts of pressure on the quarterback that you just can't tolerate. So Georgia, ironically, dealt with this, and then they fixed themselves last year. So can Texas do that? Trevor Gooseby, offensive tackle, stud. I have no doubts about him. Other than that, you got to replace some guards here. What caliber of offensive line are we trotting out there in Austin? They crushed it at running back. They just basically flushed their running back room and said, if we can get Raleek Brown and we can get Hollywood Smothers, we can get both of those guys out of the portal, and we can because we're Texas, then we're good. And they did that, and they should be good there. Also, I don't want to overlook this. You know, Texas added a lot of players from the transfer portal, but they also added Mark Stoops, who was fired as the head coach at Kentucky, and he's just there right now. And it's interesting to me for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because Texas struggled mightily against Kentucky last year, so it's always nice to have that voice defensively in your building now. But the other part is, if you'll notice, Texas, against Georgia, for example, they have finished runner-up in the physicality department, in the toughness department on the field against Georgia, 3 times now in the past couple of years, I guess it is. And I always remember Kirby Smart talking about the toughest physical battle his team had every year, and he always circled Kentucky. He always circled Mark Stoops. Now, they could just meat grind their way to wins against Kentucky because they could out-roster them, but it was always a bloodbath. I don't know how much of that Mark Stoops can serve to infuse into the Texas program. He is just one man after all. But it doesn't hurt having a guy like that in your building. So I'll keep an eye on that. At LSU, this was the worst team in the league running the ball. I want to say it again for emphasis. LSU was the worst team in the SEC running the ball last year. They realized it, as did everyone under the sun, and so Lane Kiffin comes in, and then he brings in 6 new offensive linemen from the portal. Question, how good can the running back room be? Because you're going to look on this right here, and on paper, it's going to be, I don't know. But then, you know, you hit up Shea Dixon, for example. You hit up the guys close to the program down there, and they'll tell you Harlem Berry, it was very, very important they kept him around. Caden Durham, it was very important they kept him around. Dylan Jones is a guy, I believe, that transferred from Wisconsin, who would probably figure 3rd on the depth chart, but has been an early buy-in guy. A guy's given him a lot of juice. I just wonder how good that tailback room can be. I wonder how good the entire team can be. I wonder, with a total of, what did we count, Jesse? 1 reception returning in the wide receiver room. Not the tight end room, just the wide receiver room. I wonder how effective that room can be. Look, they brought in a lot of potential impact guys. I get how the portal works. I get all of it. It's just got to gel. It's got to coalesce because it's a new team for Lane Kiffin, very high expectations. They're not going to give you an introductory year down there. So this is probably going to be the highest attention spring practice that you can remember in quite a while in Baton Rouge. At Alabama, obviously we got the quarterback battle there. So Alabama, you're going to have Keelan Russell, you're going to have Austin Mack, and that's going to be the most high-profile quarterback battle in the country. We did a whole segment on that the other night. So let's move past the quarterback battle. 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are gone. Their offensive line coach is gone. Now, you can listen to that if you live in Boise, Idaho, and say, uh-oh, Bama's in trouble. People in Tuscaloosa, Alabama listen to that and probably say, good, you know, because we low-key sucked there last year. And that led to them not being able to run the ball, and that led to Ty Simpson. It took all the way to the playoff, but it finally led to him getting injured, and he was hurt all year, but finally couldn't play anymore physically by the time the Rose Bowl came around. Looks like they trust their recruiting and development because they didn't go and overhaul in the portal at offensive line either. I know they went after Jacarius Peak. but South Carolina landed him, and he's out at South Carolina right now. But other than that, I mean, they got a lot of guys they've recruited that are young that they're going to trust here. I look at the other side of the ball and wonder if they're good enough on the interior of the defensive line. And again, like I've said 3 or 4 times tonight, it's okay not to know everything with the start of spring ball, but we don't have to talk about it a whole lot longer. We start to figure a lot of this out in March. What about Oklahoma? Yet again, 4 for 4 here. Teams that should have been better than they were last year, but they couldn't run the ball, so they didn't maximize their potential. Well, John Mateer is back at quarterback. As I said last show, a lot of competing theories out there about how good John Mateer can be. I picked the guy to win the Heisman last year, partly because I thought it was good value, let's be real. And so, I mean, I've sold the ticket because it's invalid now, but I haven't sold my John Mateer stock. But here's what I need, all right? I got 2 top tailbacks returning here. Defense is always going to be good, because it's Brent Venables. But 4 or 5 offensive linemen being back, I just got to have them be better. I got to have them be so much better than they were last year because 113th rushing, look, even 73rd rushing is not going to be good enough. That's what will teach me about the ultimate ceiling of this team. Got a tough schedule again? You did last year. And I don't want to talk about them like they went 6-6. They went to the playoff. The problem was they were a 1-story house, and you needed to be 2 or 3 stories tall to win come postseason, and they couldn't because they couldn't run the ball. I mean, they faced another team that couldn't run the ball and couldn't even beat them. Georgia, hey guys, do me one favor. Check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you are, great. If you're not, it's that easy. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It just helps us do the show this way forever. All right, back to the clip. It's interesting. I put Georgia purposefully next after those 4 teams because remember, this time last year, going into spring, what were people talking about? They were talking about Carson Beck transferring. So Gunnar Stockton, like how good's he going to be? And they were saying, wait a second, hold on. We couldn't run the ball last year. Carson Beck bailed us out a lot, threw for like 19,000 yards, but we just lost a guy who could throw the ball. Gunnar Stockton's a lot more of a running quarterback. If we can't run the ball this year, we're going to be in big trouble. Hey, that was not breaking news to Kirby Smart and his staff, so they corrected. Okay, they've already been in the position a lot of these other teams are in. They couldn't run the ball well at all in 2024, but they pulled the nose up in 2025. So, as is often the case, if you're trying to figure things out in the SEC, look to Athens, Georgia. They probably have a blueprint for it that they've used at some point along the way. But at Georgia, they're losing 4 of their top 5 wide receivers. And I was going back just for fun the other day, looking at some of the 2021, 2022 Georgia games. They were so loaded at wide receiver, probably didn't appreciate it enough at the time because you just always thought it would be like an endless supply of those kinds of guys. It wasn't. And so I wonder if they're going to be dynamic enough in that room. And then I wonder if there's going to be a different level to Gunnar Stockton's game. If there's not, that's okay. But, I always kind of wonder, all right, well, does a guy level up? They're replacing Monroe Freeling at tackle. And look, I don't know that they just have the guy to do that, but they're counting on in-house guys as well. This is not a huge portal program. They have the ability to. They don't ignore it. It's not a Dabo Clemson sort of thing, but they don't heavily rely on it. And they haven't here either. But it's Georgia too, so very high floor. Texas A&M. One of the most fascinating teams in all of college football to follow right now because they had a good offensive line. They're losing a lot. But with Marcel Reed, I ask the same thing about him. I ask how high is the floor because he had a very, very volatile second half of his season last year. I mean, there are a lot of the highs were high, but the lows were really low. Just watch the South Carolina game. I have never been on that kind of emotional ride. Was that the biggest comeback, Jesse? What was it? It was like the biggest comeback in conference play history or something like that. Crazy. So that's not fun. That's not fun. What you want is you want to compress the variance a little bit. Okay, let's have a little more consistency in outcome. Well, they have to replace both coordinators, and they did an organ. They promoted from within. Holloman Wiggins is the new OC there. Lyle Hemphill is the new OC and the new DC there. This is where if I'm right about Mike Elko, if they're right about Mike Elko, this is really the spring where it starts to bear itself out. And by right, I mean thinking he is a supreme evaluator and developer of talent. And also just happens to be at a program that can go get a lot of it. But then is it bettering itself? Or is it the opposite? Are you getting guys on campus and the best they'll ever be is the day they walk on campus? Well, I don't think that's Mike Elko's Texas A&M. They did look at the portal, and specifically they needed to backfill in the front seven there. So a lot of their future, a lot of their destiny this year will depend on portal additions defensively in that front seven. Tennessee had a weird year last year because of the Nico Iamaleava stuff. That was post-spring, by the way. It feels like 19 years ago. It's post-spring. Tennessee loses Nico. Okay, then Joey Aguilar comes on board, and now Joey Aguilar's been ruled ineligible, so he's not going to be your starter. So we got the quarterback thing, and I'll get to that in just a second. But, they also brought in Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. That's been an interesting 3-year journey, by the way. Jim Knowles is at Ohio State. They win the national title. Then James Franklin pulls off the Big Ten coup of the hiring cycle, and he goes and gets Jim Knowles and brings him in. But then halfway through the season, not even halfway through the first half of the season, James Franklin's out. And so Jim Knowles is in State College 1 year, and then he's out, and now he's gone to Blacksburg? No, he's gone to Knoxville because Josh Heupel hired him. And he brought, Jesse, like 3 or 4 guys with him that'll probably end up being starters, and it's needed because Tennessee went from 6th to 92nd over the span of 1 year in total defense. Fell off a cliff. So they'll be better defensively this year. But the book on Knowles has always been it takes a couple years, sometimes 3 years, before his system really, starts to click. Well, no one wants to wait that long because we've got a quarterback battle here. It's George McIntyre and it's Faison Brandon. And the whole thing with Faison Brandon is, if not now, eventually. But they're overall in a position where it's so clear when you look at their team profile, 2027 should be a huge year for Tennessee. That's so clear. The question is, how fast could they run in 2026? Now, Josh Heupel does not think this way, but I'm thinking about 2026 as a build year. Like a teeing it up year, like a building up to max speed year. Sometimes you just get out of the gate a little bit quicker than folks thought you would, and the year before ends up being the year. So that's what we're watching. Quarterback battle, obviously, but outside of that, that's what I'm watching with Tennessee. South Carolina, it's tough at South Carolina right now. Both offensive tackles are out for spring. One of them is out for the year. Thompson, I think, is out for the year. Jacarius Peak was the transfer from NC State, and a great player, man, like a big-time portal addition, promptly gets hurt, I think in conditioning work in February. Now, they think they'll be able to get him back. Shane Beamer has said as much, but he's not active for the spring. Now, it's not a young player, so it's not that this work is absolutely critical for his development, but these offensive linemen, man, they always talk about how different things are, how different practice reps are. Now, Kublik's come on the show and talked about it a lot. So don't love that my new tackles miss in spring. Is there another 2 or 3 pass catchers behind Nick Harbor? For that matter, here's what I'll be looking for. Broad stroke here, immunity. How many things are fundamentally different than this time last year? Because last year led to 4 and 8. So how many things are fundamentally different? How many things have fundamentally improved about South Carolina football this year as opposed to last year? Spring, guys.